Hello, everyone. Hello. Feel free to say hi in the chat. Mary, we're going to give everybody just a few minutes to join.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi, Lena.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, guys.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Laura. Hi, everyone.
Everyone.
Hi. Hi.
All right, we'll just give everybody a few more minutes. Maybe like 2 or 3, then we'll get started. I know we got a lot to cover in a short period of time. How's everybody doing this morning or afternoon or evening? No, personally, I'm a little tired, so I'll be drinking coffee throughout this call. Good evening, then. Coffee's on there, Lena. It's late in your day.
Exactly. That's why coffee is on. I mean, it's 2 p.m. It's not that late, but you know.
No, 2 p.m. is a good final coffee time. Any later than that, and then I'm up all night.
Same.
All right, we've got a good amount of people here, so I'm just gonna begin. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. And also, if you're here, it means you made your way through all of the courses, or you're nearly there. Just don't tell me. So first of all, congratulations to you all. I know there's a lot of content, a lot to take in, but we really appreciate how much you're excited about this work and learning new things and applying that work to your real life and applying for these funds. So thank you for doing all of the courses and thank you for being on this call today. It already means a lot that you're here and you've made it this far. So I got a lot of questions in the form, in the RCP form, that I'm happy to run through. But if you have any additional questions when I'm finished or as I go, just put them in the chat. Or you're welcome after I go through all the questions to raise your hand and ask anything over audio as well. I just figured that would be the most efficient way to get through all of the questions that you've submitted. Before I go through those questions, I just want to emphasize some top line points. Hi, Sophina, I see your hand is raised. Do you have a question, overall question? You can unmute if you'd like. I don't know if you meant to raise your hand, but I will just keep going. So just a few top line things before we begin. I know that the instructions that you have in that Google Doc are long and detailed. I apologize for that, but I also wanted to make sure that you had all the information you needed to get everything done, to really understand how this process will look. But just some top line points, because a few questions asked about some of the things that were in the instructions, and I want to make sure to emphasize those things. So the first is, as you probably all know, if you're on this call, you are only eligible to submit this proposal and have it reviewed if you've completed each of the required courses. The list of required courses are in the Google Doc if you need to go through and use that as a checklist. And then on the November 3rd deadline for these proposals, Alina, who's here on the call, and I will be checking the emails you've submitted against the profiles in the Advocacy Assembly system and making sure that you've taken those courses. If you've not taken all the courses, you'll be removed from the pool of applications. So just underlining, please make sure that you've taken all the required courses. We will also be emailing everyone, so don't worry that the back end might not reflect what you're experiencing. We'll make sure that you know what we're seeing on the back end as it relates to your email. Also, no matter what happens with the proposal process, everyone will be receiving a new certificate. I know there have been some issues with downloading the current certificates, but you'll get a certificate saying you completed all of the courses as part of the Advocacy Assembly Internet Shutdown Academy. So that is exciting. And if you're on this call, I imagine that you'll all be receiving that. And just again, to underline, in case it is not clear, this is a competitive proposal process. A few people seem to think that as soon as they finish the action plans and the proposals, they'll receive funding. Unfortunately, I wish that everyone who had taken the asynchronous course could get funding because you're all amazing, but we only have so much funding. So I'll go through what we expect on that. The numbers of grants we expect to give out when I get to the budget section, but just so we're perfectly clear, this is a competitive proposal process, so put your best in, and I'll talk a little bit about what makes a proposal competitive also later on. Another top line point, so a few people are asking to record this. Just know I'm denying it for some security purposes, but I am recording the call. So, or it should be, yeah, I'm recording the call and I'm going to share it with the wider group so everyone has access to it. So you'll receive that anyway. So just so you know that it is being recorded. I should have announced that anyway in the beginning. So thank you for those who wanted to record it for reminding me of that. So yeah, so competitive process, put your best out there. Another top line thing, budgets must be between 500 USD and 1000 USD. Do not go over the 1000 USD. We will selectively eliminate people who choose to ignore that. So make sure to stick within that range. If you can't do your project within that range, scale it down, scope it down. We won't unfortunately be able to fund anyone over that range. And I'll talk a little bit more about how to estimate your budget when I get to that set of questions. And then finally, top line things. Your timeline must be from November through February. Whatever you're doing must be completed by February. In part, this has to do with the project timelines of the Advocacy Assembly Internet Shutdown project. But also we wanted this to be scoped to be a first action. So 4 months is what we're working with here. And I know that there's a lot of actions that take longer than that. So if you want to make a case for something that can continue past the 4 months, that's fine to do, but just make sure that there are clear deliverables that have been accomplished at that 4 months. I know research sometimes takes a little bit longer, so just make sure that you have a draft of something, or you've had an event at that 4 month point. So I'd say the most important thing for you to think about when you're thinking about what makes a proposal competitive is making the case for what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that is true for budget, that's true for timeline, being as specific as possible on why this action is really important right now in your country, in your context, and how you're going to do it with a good amount of specificity is, I'd say, the through line for the most compelling proposals. So with that, I'm just going to go through the questions that I received in the form, and then I'll go backwards and look at the chat and answer any other questions in the chat. So the first set of questions, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough. I hope it doesn't interrupt us too much, are on the action plans. So just to begin talking about the action plans, to make that clear, we're asking you to submit the action plan worksheet from the second course, the course that I ran, and then also the proposal form. I tried to make this clear in the instructions, but just to underline this again, you don't have to accomplish everything in your action plan, and your action plan should be you thinking big. Everything that I said in that course is how you should interpret the action plan. What do you want to do in a year? What do you want to do in 2 years? Do you have an election coming up next year or the following, and do you want to prepare for that? What is your ultimate end goal here? 4 months is not a lot of time to do a huge project, but we really want to understand how to situate what you're proposing for your smaller project within a wider context. So that's why we're asking you to do the action plans. It's as much for you as, if not more so for you than it is for us. For me, it allows me to get a bigger picture of, what are the issues in your country? Why do you think advocacy on shutdowns is important right now? What are some of the big dreams that you have for the kind of work you could do if you had more funding? And that also helps you think about, like, let's say you don't receive the funding from here, but you have already thought about what you want to do, and maybe there are groups you could work with locally to accomplish some of those things. I have a list of funders in that action planning course, and there's also a way to make a pitch proposal template in that course. So there's a lot of reasons to do an action plan that aren't just we made you do it for this course and for this proposal. So that's the first thing on the action plans. Now I'll just go through the questions. So the first question is, how can I edit the action plan worksheet? I don't have permission. I've gotten a lot of emails and messages about this. So just so we're clear, you don't want to edit the template that I have, or then everyone in the group will see your edits. They might change them. So instead of editing it, you're going to make a copy of the worksheet. So you'll do file, make a copy, and then that copy you can save and edit. And that'll also be what you share with me in the proposal form. So take a look at that. It's not too difficult. Then question number 2, the content in the cells of the action plan cannot change, or do I submit my own action plan? So I interpreted this question as you were looking at some of the template answers from the Bangladesh example that I shared. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. The group that I worked with on that example was really thoughtful about when the shutdown might happen, the groups they'd want to work with, many activities that are possible. And so I shared that with you to give you some inspiration, but you should definitely submit your own action plan. Don't copy those answers. Those are very specific to Bangladesh. And I know that there are a few people from Bangladesh on this call, and it's a bit old, so you should make it your own. It's only meant to serve as a reference to help you envision what your plan could look like. So don't copy it, because I helped write that, so I know what the answers are and I will remember those. So I will know who copied it. So question number 3 on action plans. Do the activities in my action plan need to be completed during the project implementation or just serve as a guide? So I sort of answered this already, but basically no, you do not need to accomplish all of your activities from your action plan. This is for you to have strategy for longer term advocacy. You should think through risks of shutdowns and the needs of your community. And your project, I would say, should be 1, maybe 2 of those activities if you think you can fit it in with the budget and the timeline that we have. And it's up to you which activities you want to focus on. You can choose those activities based on your own capacities. What do you think you can best do leading? And also, what do you think is a good way to start or make the case for some of your later activities? Like, what are the first things that you need to do to accomplish? And when you do submit the proposal, there are a couple questions. Why these activities? How do they relate to your wider action plan? And that's where you'll make the case for these activities, saying like, right now is the time to do this thing, or I am a really good documentarian and I think doing a film that drums up interest is in line with my own skill set. Or I have great connections with a legal network and I think we could work together and think about legal strategy. So you should make a case for why this activity. Next question. I'm gonna grab some water too. Take a breath. Do we need to include all stakeholder groups, even if we are not going to work with all of them? This is a really good question. So yes, as I said with this action plan, it's to think big. So you should include a lot of different stakeholder groups, because sometimes we don't think about actions to engage with. One thing that came up in the Bangladesh example were taxi drivers or Uber drivers. So people who rely on the internet to make their money. And so when there's a shutdown, it significantly impacts them. But they were kind of an overlooked group. We hadn't really thought about them as potentially involved in advocacy. And so that open brainstorming process was helpful for us to say, maybe we could do some research, understanding how shutdowns impact this group of people and their ability to make money and support their families, or maybe we can mobilize them. So we encourage you to think big and throw all of your thoughts in there. So I'll just move on to the next question because I think it relates to that one. Should we consult with our potential stakeholders before building this action plan? So you don't need to consult with anyone for this action plan per the requirements of this proposal. We know that getting people behind something takes a lot of work. So this is an exercise for you, but as you might remember from the action planning course, I said it's really useful to do the action planning process as a group, just because lots of people will contribute. So if you do want to involve, your organization or some people from your community in building that out or giving you feedback on what you've put together, you are more than welcome to do so. The next question is, can we do the action plan worksheet as a team with another member who has completed the course, or others in our organization? Great question. Yes, you can. We would love to see collaborative proposals. I hadn't really thought about this in the application when I put it together. So what you should do is have one person put their name and email where it says name and email. And then there's a later question that says, will you involve partners or other organizations? And that's when you should put the other person's name and their email. So really happy to have people who have taken this course together collaborate. You can be a part of the same organization, you can be in the same country. If you wanted to do something that crosses two countries and you can make a case for why that's useful, then absolutely. We're excited to see what you come up with. Is it necessary to fill out all the columns in the action plan? So this is a little bit repetitive of the last few questions, but or my answers really. I recommend being as comprehensive as possible in filling out the action plan. So we don't want to just see the few activities you're proposing for the proposal. We also want to see the bigger ideas. So fill out as much as possible. We're not going to be grading the action plans like, 97 out of 100 or 70 out of 100. It'll be to get a bigger picture. So if you think something is irrelevant, then you can pass on it, but use it as much as you can. This brings very nicely into the next point. What are the key things you will be looking for when reviewing the action plans? I feel like I'm going to be saying a lot of what I've already said, but I wrote a really great answer. I'll be sharing these answers also in written form too. So we're looking to see that you are thoroughly filling out the action plan and thinking bigger about how internet shutdowns impact your country and region, the different stakeholders that are impacted and who you could involve, and potential events that could trigger a shutdown. We want the action plan to tell a story about internet shutdowns and their impact in your community, and then your thoughts on potential actions that could fight back. So don't have them merely echo your project proposals. We want to understand how your activity fits into a bigger plan. I know that you are all brilliant and want to see change in your countries as it relates to censorship and shutdown. So we really want insight into that. All right. Can I send you my action plan by email? Please do not send the action plan by email. I've been getting a lot of emails, and I am sorry if I am not quick to respond to them. I just have a lot. There's a question in the proposal form for you to be able to share a link to your version of the Google Doc. So you'll copy you'll go and share Google Doc for your action plan, take the link, and then you'll put it in that proposal form. If you have issues with that, we can talk about how to share your action plan, but please do it there because it just makes my life easier as I'm reviewing everything, and it also doesn't clog up my inbox. All right, can you provide feedback on my action plan? So due to the quantity of action plans and proposals that I will be receiving, I will not be able to provide in-depth feedback on the action plan for everyone at this moment. It does not mean that I don't want to provide feedback on your action plan. So after all the dust is settled and I've reviewed everything and we've gone through the startup process, and you still want to get feedback from me, or you're still interested in learning more about other funding types, you can reach out to me and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Just know I've got a lot of moving parts for this project. So if I'm not responding, it doesn't mean that I don't care. I genuinely do. As I go through in the review process, I will try to give feedback. It might be small, but I'm going to try to do it because I do think it's important and I value all of your time and effort. So bear with me, but I'll do what I can, basically, is my answer. So that's all the questions I have on the action planning process. I know we've got some questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to raise their hand to unmute and ask a question about the action plans or anything I just talked about, feel free to do so. If not, I'm going to move on to the next section, just in the interest of time. Also gives me a chance to drink some water and coffee. So I'm just looking at the chat, and I will go back and look at the other chat questions, but Eliza says, can we know the deadline for submission? The deadline is November 3rd. So you have a week and a day from today. But for questions like that, I tried to be comprehensive in the description and instructions in the Google Doc. So refer back to that. All of the information is in there. So yes. Safina, I see your hand raised. I don't know if you want to unmute. Now I cannot hear you. I see that you've unmuted, but I don't hear you. You can also add your question to the chat if you're having trouble with your mic. And Hifsa, I see your hand is raised too. All right, I'm gonna just move on for the sake of time. We got a lot to go through, and I have another set of these meetings at the hour point, so I don't want to deprive you of time to ask other questions. So I'm just gonna move on. So the next section of questions that I received are on topics and focus of the projects. So important stuff. You know, what are compelling projects? So the question is, my country has not experienced an internet shutdown before or in a long time. There were a couple questions around that, but I want to be prepared in case it happens. Will you fund me for this? So my answer to you is, if your country has never experienced a shutdown or you haven't had one in a really long time, it does not mean your country is not at risk of shutdowns. So what we ask you to do is make the case for that. I'll give you an example, which is I was working with an organization, Junction, in Senegal from 2020. And in Senegal, a lot of people didn't think that there would be a shutdown. There had been like a really short shutdown. You probably remember this from the second course. But when we did research, most people were like, I don't know if there'll be a shutdown. We've never really experienced that kind of censorship before. But there were enough people who were worried about it because of what was going on politically. So there was a lot of tension politically. The president said he was going to run for an unconstitutional third term. There had been a lot of talk about regulating social media, things that were a little unprecedented. And so because of that, we decided to focus resources and attention on shutdowns in Senegal. And then unfortunately, this year, there were a few major shutdowns. But you know, on the flip side of that, we had a group of people that were prepared. So if you think there are signs that make you think you need to prepare in your country, then just make the case for that. And why is your activity specifically something that would be helpful in preparing in a context where people might not believe this is going to happen because it's never happened before? Another good example is Tanzania. Didn't happen until it happened on the elections, and elections are really good points for preparing, even if you think it might not happen. The next question is, do the projects need to focus on ending shutdowns or enduring them? Projects can focus on ending shutdowns. They can focus on preparing for shutdowns. They can focus on responding to shutdowns after they happen, or advocacy after a shutdown has happened to prevent future shutdowns. So you can be in any phase in a shutdown is happening or not happening or once happened process, and as long as you think that it's strategic, you should propose it. And it should speak to the course content in some way, shape, or form. So you know, there's a lot of ways to interpret the different pieces of the courses, and certain courses align themselves better with preparation and some align themselves better with advocacy response. So just think about that when you're doing a proposal. So someone asked what type of proposals are preferred. So that's a broad question that I have a really hard time answering because you know, we'll want to look at everything that we receive and we'll make decisions based on the content that you put together. But I would say review the guidance that I put together on project types and examples that's linked to in the Google Doc. It has the categories that I have in the proposal form, and then some descriptions of what that could look like, and a few examples. It doesn't mean that you have to stick to any of that. I'd say the main thing that is helpful for making the case for your proposal, and I said this earlier, is being really specific and being clear in why this project is needed. So I tried, sometimes when you have an open proposal and you have to write like a grant, you have to answer some of those questions within an overall like draft of something, writing something out. But I tried to ask questions that are very specific to that. So like, why is this important right now? And so make sure you answer those questions as targeted and specifically as possible. I'll also be looking at scope. I think, unfortunately, a lot of the things that I see when people trip up on proposal writing is they think too big or too small. You know, they'll want to run one training, and for me, I'm like, well, that's, you know, why is that one training so impactful? And or they, you know, want to do stuff that I think would take a year and triple the funding. So really think, be really realistic about, you know, what you want to do and try to make the most of it. All right. I notice that we have 8 potential campaign areas. Does that mean that for every area, only one project will be funded? No, that does not mean that. I came up with 8 because they were the 8 that I could think of. But we may fund 5 in one area and 1 in another. It really depends on the best proposals we receive. They were just a way to give you ideas of what you could do. And it totally depends on the quality of the proposal and the needs that are articulated. Question, are proposals that work with the government preferred? Answer, no, they're not preferred. So I know that in some countries that is not possible. It is impossible to work with governments on these issues. So we would certainly not penalize people who can't work with government. Again, this goes back to my point, which is your project should really correspond to the needs in your country, as should your action plan. If you're working in a country, let's say you don't even live in your country anymore, you know, you're in asylum, but you still want to focus on your country. There's a lot of different strategies that you might take that someone else, you know, can't take or wouldn't take because they're based in their country and they can, you know, talk to stakeholders there. So just make sure that it corresponds with the political realities that you're facing. And I will say, though, if it is possible in your country to engage government actors and you can make a compelling argument about this strategy, so you could say, I already am in a group that works with parliamentarians, or, you know, I work with local government in this capacity in my work. Like, if you can make a case for why it's strategic for you to be the person doing that kind of government interfacing, or lobbying, or how possible it is, then that's a compelling argument and could be a competitive proposal. So this is the final question in the content section. Can we target the ISPs and the MNOs for training on how to bypass orders from government on internet shutdowns? So similar to the last one, but instead of government, it's the internet service providers and mobile service providers. And yes, if you think that in your country, again, it goes back to what's possible in your country. If you think it's possible, or there's some probability that internet service providers and other companies that certainly suffer during shutdowns could do something, or have the ability to push back against the government, make the case for that, and then also make the case for why you're the best person or organization placed to articulate that. Like, do you already have connections with ISPs and MNOs? What kinds of guidance do you think would be helpful for these organizations? I think it's a really thoughtful project and possibility. You just need to both make the case for it being something that an ISP would want to receive, and also that you or your organization would be the best people to make the case for that. So I hope I answered that well. So that's all the questions I got on project content. I'm going to stop there. If anyone has any follow-on questions from the information I've already given on these topics, or I can move on, and I promise I will. I'm going quickly so that so I can get through all these questions in the chat as well once I'm finished. So just quickly, does anybody have anything they want to unmute and ask? I'm also going to use it as the opportunity to have another drink of coffee. All right. Oh wait, Charles, I see your hand is up.
Hi, Laura. So my question would be, well, since the fellowship was concurrently going on with the few selected fellows and others that were using the other platform to follow through the fellowship, what are the chances in terms of the opportunity to be funded in terms of the concepts that we'll be submitting to Advocacy Assembly? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as you know, when you applied for this program, you were applying for an initial fellowship that did have pretty much guaranteed funding at the end of it. So there were about 30 people who were accepted to that program. And that one has been a little bit more hands-on than your program. Their funding we've already secured. When we got so many amazing applications, Alina and I talked, Alina on this call, and we decided to make this program and this opportunity for you because we felt like only funding 30 people out of the many applications we received would be doing everybody a disservice, including ourselves. So Alina and the Advocacy Assembly team found additional funding for your proposals, for the ones that get accepted from here. So I will get to how many we think we'll be able to fund in just a section, because one of the sections is on budget. But the fact that there is this other group who are also working on projects and have funding does not impact the funding that we have for you all. What it does impact is my time, because I am going to be working with 30 people on putting their proposals together and also implementing projects. So just keep that in mind as we go. My time is a little bit limited. That's why we can't do, I mean, budget is also a limitation, but there's a number of limitations, including my own capacity. Bent, I'll take your last question and then I'll move on if you want to unmute.
Hi, Lara. Good evening. So I just have a small question. Last night, I just finished the action plan. You have got in your template, but why I put on the Google form? So I found multiple information, so much information take time for a couple of hours. So that's why after I review everything, and then I check one thing is to be put as an optional. It is a PowerPoint PPT. You are prefer to put, right? So,
Yes.
but that is not I'm not prepared yet. But on the other hand, I didn't check the deadline. That's why I worry, and then the time I cannot maybe have a chance to prepare. That's why I put right away. But if I want to add this PPT, is it okay?
Yeah, so that's a great question and great point. So I think there's two things there. One is, if you haven't already gone through the proposal form, which you might not have because I have sections, at the end, I give people the opportunity to submit something that is not in writing. I know not everybody, their number one capacity is writing, especially in English. So if you want to submit a video or a PowerPoint, as Fan said, at the end that you think enhances your argument for your project, you are welcome to do so. Try to keep the size small, because I have size maximums on my Google Drive, but I did want to give you the opportunity to, like, if you're really good at social media and, you know, creating content, and your project is about that and you want to show me that, then you can upload something. please only upload things that you think enhance the project that you are trying to argue for. If you're just uploading something to upload something, I'll be able to get that. So think about it strategically. Again, it's another way for you to be able to make a case for the project that you're specifically proposing, but it should align with that. And you don't have to do that. It's not a requirement. It's only if you want to. And then your second part of your question then is, can you go back in and edit it? I don't think I have that setting open on the form. I'll see if I can change that. So you can go back in and edit it. But if I can change it, you could just create a new proposal and then just put NA with your name, and then or put in one of the questions I'm just adding to my proposal, and then you can add the PowerPoint. I'll follow up. I'll put a note on the Q&As to see if I can change that setting so you can go in and edit your responses.
I don't need any other information. It is okay, but only want to add one more PPT.
Great.
It's fine. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I know we have a few hands up. I'm just gonna go through some of the remaining questions that were in the form, but keep your hands up because I see them in the order that you raised them, and I will call on you after I get through those. So just to get along, because I know we only have 20 minutes left. So really quickly, I'm gonna run through the last two topics, which are partners in orgs and timeline. Is it possible to merge my project within work I am currently undertaking for my organization? Yes, if your project relates to internet shutdown advocacy, you are welcome to undertake it as part of your current work. You should just make this clear on your application. So how does the work that you're already doing with your organization fit in with this project? For us, I think that's not a problem. And in fact, so sometimes something that comes up when you're applying for things like this is a thing called cost share. So you might be already working on a project with your organization that maybe is already funded. This is the only instance where you can go over the $1,000 budget. Like if you say I have $400 already committed to my time on this from my organization and you include it in your budget, that's nice for us to see. And it also shows us that our funding is supplementing that, it's not an overlap. So just make that clear on the application and in the budget. Okay, questions on timeline. Is there a timeline for this project? Again, as per the instructions, the timeline is from November to February, should be accomplishable within 4 months. From when will we receive the answers if we are accepted for the projects? So you'll receive the answers after the review process. The review process will begin on November 3rd. And we will aim to have responses to you after that next week. So after the week of the 6th, I'm going to do my best to get those back to you as quickly as possible. I already have coffee. Oh, well, thank you for my 2 hour. That's my husband. He's very nice. He brought me 2 coffees. All right. Yes, so we will try to get back to you all as quickly as possible because we know that you've got to finish by February, so we want to get started soon. It also depends on how many we receive. I'm not sure how many people are going to submit full proposals. So if it's more, it might take a little longer. If it's less, it might take a little less. I'll try to update you all so you're not holding off, but we won't take a really long time, basically, because we know that we got to get started. All right, only a few more questions and then I will take hands and stuff from the chat. Is there a standardized structure for the budget? If you haven't already looked at the proposal form, there are 2 questions in there about your budget. The first one is just your overall number request. And the second is what your budget lines are. And I also provided a budget guidance document that's linked in the Google document. So take a look at that for some examples of line items that can be funded. Question, can I present my budget in my local currency? Yes, you can. If you can convert it to US dollars, it makes it a little bit easier for me, but you are welcome to do that. I can also convert it. Just make sure it fits within the range that we have described. So question, on average, how many people completed this course and how many people will be funded? Answer, we don't know the answer yet. I already kind of got at this. We're waiting for people to submit their proposals, and then we'll check to see the numbers, to see who's eligible. I estimate that we might receive about 60 of these, and of people who have completed the full proposals and will submit something. And how many we will fund, it really depends on the budgets that are proposed for the most competitive. So when I and the team at Advocacy Assembly are looking at these proposals, we're going to say, okay, this is a really great project, and they've only estimated that it'll cost 600, which maybe means we have more funding for this other proposal, or we'll just say, there's 4 proposals that are really good and they've asked for the maximum amount. So it'll be a little bit of a weighing the cost versus the amount that we'll be able to give out. So I would estimate between 4 and 8 proposals will be funded. So just keep that in mind. And then the last question from the forms, and then I will drink, 1 sip from both of my coffees and let you all ask your questions. If we do not win the funds, will you help us find funding for our projects? So I really care about all of the work that you have done, and I personally know how disappointing it is to put in so much work in something and then not get funding. I have been rejected for funding more times than I can count. I have a folder of rejected proposals that I've submitted, so I know how that feels. I am already actively looking for other organizations that might be able to fund additional projects, and we'll also provide a list of organizations you can reach out to. That said, just know that with 35 people that are going to be implementing their project, my capacity is going to be constrained. So I can't put my all in trying to find funding for people who don't get funding, but know in the long term, I am very much here for you and want to be able to give you guidance and help you so that this is not an activity that you did that falls to the wayside. So I really genuinely care. Just keep in mind that there will be 35 projects that we will be trying to get off the ground at that time as well. But also I'll be thinking about ways to at least connect you with information on who funds and help think through what funding can look like in different places. So I hope that's helpful. And I will think a little bit more about that as we get the proposals in. So just know that I know the struggle. I have had too many rejections, and I appreciate all of your work, and I want to be as helpful as possible. Okay, we have like 13 minutes left for everyone whose hand is raised. So I think Hafiza, you were first. Charles, I think you already answered your question, so I don't know if you need to put your hand down. And then Mojirayo, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It's a beautiful name. You're next, and then I will look through the questions in the chat. If I don't get to your questions in the chat, I will look at them after this call, and I will add them to the Q&A writing that I have put together so that they are answered. And I will post that in the Google Doc, and I will send an email. So you should have your questions answered comprehensively. Go ahead, Hafiza. Please.
Okay.
Please tell me if
Thank you, Laura.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for answering my questions on the chat box. Actually, this is just like more follow-up questions from my questions on the chat box. Since we have 2 people that already completed the courses from our organizations, if I'm not mistaken, you said that it is possible for us to integrate our project proposal. But then do we need to still separate it when we submit the proposal, or just make it one single proposal? Thank you, Laura.
I would say if the projects are aligned, make it one single proposal. And if you want to do them as two separate ones and just indicate in each proposal that they are linked, and just explain how, you can do that. If you submit, I will say if you submit as one proposal, we will consider that as one proposal within the budget of one project. If you submit as two and you just say they're linked, we could consider them as two projects that are linked budget-wise. But also keep in mind, if you're working in the same country and we only have so much funding, we might be less inclined to fund two projects at a maximum budget. So you might want to split the budget and make it smaller so that we can fund two. So you could do either of those approaches. So pick and choose, just make sure that I know when I'm reading the responses that you have linked these two proposals, and I will review them that way. I hope that answers your question. I'll try to put some more guidance on working together in the Q&A document. So it's not something that I had thought about until I started getting your questions. So I'll send some specific guidance, but I hope that answers your question. Next, I think was Charles. I think you already asked a question.
No, I have a follow-up
Okay,
question.
sorry. Oh, can you
Yes.
put it in the chat, just because we don't have a huge amount of time and I want to get to everybody's questions. I promise I'll answer the follow-up
Okay.
questions as well.
Okay, thank
so
you.
much. Kahinde, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So, Laura, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you so much. I want to commend what you're doing, and the courses have been impressive. So I got my message, but I also want to ask, so beyond the project, beyond the funding, for us, an organization would like to be introduced to the organization. Like I would love to work with them, the organization that produce those courses. Will you be willing or available to facilitate those conversations for collaboration? Thank you.
That's a great question, Kahinde. Thank you so much for asking it. Yes, absolutely. I think most of the presenters are very willing for me to share their contact info. So I will reach out to them just to confirm that. And then I can make a list of the organizations and experts and their contact info so you can reach out to them. I'll put that in my notes to make sure to do for you. So, because yes, part of this is also being connected to other people in the network. And that's in part why the WhatsApp group and the Signal group were created as well, so you can connect with each other. But it's a great point. I will do an expert contact list as well. All right, I'm going to try to go through some of these questions in the chat in the last 8 minutes. I got a few questions on anonymity. Can someone go anonymous on your organization or affiliation? Yes. You do not need to put organization or affiliation if you do not want to. Just write anonymous or prefer not to answer. Someone else asked about Felicia from Access Now in Ghana. Can we link with her to lead it so we can be anonymous? I don't see why not. You'd have to ask Felicia, but Felicia's job is essentially to work on internet shutdown, so she might be amenable to that. If you get her, to be involved, or you want to propose getting her to be involved, just put it in the proposal. And if you're worried about you personally or your organization being the face of your project, just write that in some of the answers and explain how you will operate anonymously. But you can absolutely operate anonymously. The difficulty is in applying for funding and receiving funding as an anonymous person. We do need to be able to contact you and know some version of who you are. So if you want, I put name or pseudonym. You can put your pseudonym and we can talk relatively anonymously. We'll figure out the funding, but yes, you can apply anonymously. Safina, I see your hand is raised and I know you had microphone issues earlier, so if you want to ask that question quickly as I look at the chat, feel free to unmute. All right, I am not hearing you and you are on mute. A couple more questions. I added one more stakeholder on your template. Is it okay? Yes, add as many stakeholders as possible. You do not need to stick to the template. It is just a template. You can expand it, you can add tabs, make it useful for you. That's actually really helpful for me because I made a template. It is not the perfect way to do anything, and I like to see how people use them. If a fellow had one of their objectives to investigate the impact of an internet shutdown that happened in their country 2 years ago, would this be a feasible research objective? Absolutely. I think impact of shutdowns at any point is helpful. You just want to think about whether or not people remember that shutdown happened, and depending on what your methods are, you want to take that into account. When are you going to get the certificate? Alina answered that. Thank you so much, Alina. How about having a budget upwards about 1,000 and having an explanation as to how the surplus will be funded? Yes, if you have other sources of funding, then you can make the case for a budget above 1,000, but your request to us should be 1,000 or less. Can you share your screen to show us how to complete an action plan as an example? Unfortunately, I can't do that. We have 5 minutes left, but you can rewatch the course where I do show the action plan in a good amount of detail, and look at that Bangladesh example as well for how we filled that out. Really, it's just brainstorming very specifically about timeline, what might trigger a shutdown, what are major events, stakeholders that are key or impacted, and then after you do that, thinking about actions that relate to all of those things. So Alina answered this question about the resources, saying they'll be shared on the Advocacy Assembly platform. Can the proposal cover advocacy to prevent a total shutdown in a country that hasn't experienced a complete shutdown? I think I answered that already. I want to know if you can document impact on shutdowns on different communities within a region in the past. Yes, absolutely. You can do that. Can my proposal be about a specific group of people? Yes, absolutely. You do not need to focus on a country. You could focus on a small community, however you want to define it. One of the questions in the proposal is, what is your scope? Who are the groups you're working with? So it does not have to be, in my country of India or Cameroon or Nigeria. It can be in my city, in my region. It can also be working with this type of group, working with people with disabilities in my city. Again, that actually helps you scope the project down. Working with this university students, like those are projects that I think you can accomplish a little bit better in the timelines we have. Okay, I'm out of breath. A couple of these questions have already been answered. How do we handle the conversion rates? If you're worried about conversion rates, just put it in your local currency. I'll convert it. And once things are funded, we will figure out what that means for transfers of funds, but don't worry about that. Did you say only 8 people will get funding? I said that we don't know how many people will get funding, somewhere between 4 and 8, depending on the budgets that are proposed. Will there be room for advisory amendment after the review? To reach out to someone advised for adjustments? I will say that likely the answer is no. I just do not have the time and capacity for that now. But if there's a proposal that I think is really great and maybe it's scoped a little bit big, I might reach out to you and say, hey, how about shortening it or making it smaller? If it's one of the top proposals for all these other reasons. So if there's a small thing that I think could be tweaked, I might ask you to do that. But I do not have the chance to do a review period for everyone, unfortunately. That would be my ideal, but I am only one person. I would like to be many people and also be able to sleep. Someone said my network is unstable. Just so you know, this call is being recorded. So if you had to drop or have to drop, we will send you the link. Can we get all the reading materials or resources mailed to us or in a shared drive? I think Alina already answered that. Unfortunately, they're embedded in the courses. If there are specific materials that you're interested in getting access to, let us know and we can tell you where to find them in the courses. Something I'd say for us to consider for future courses is compiling those all in one place for later review. It's just a lot of work, and as I said, we're all a little bit busy these days. Is there a way we can download the videos and slides from the training? Again, unfortunately not, but they have Creative Commons and they're online for everyone. Can I choose to work with only one stakeholder because of the funding limit? Yes, you can. The action plan should include more stakeholders, but absolutely, because of the time and budget limitations, you can say the most strategic stakeholder for me to work with right now is civil society groups or journalists, and absolutely you can just pick one. Laura, there's one section in Bangladesh template about the calendaring of dates. Can you please be brief about that? So dates are interesting and a little bit confusing. I understand why that is a confusing section. If you don't have an election coming up or you don't have something on the calendar, your calendar section might just be ongoing conflict in this region. So you don't, for all those columns, you don't have to fill everything out. It's really just to get you thinking forward about what could trigger a shutdown. And it really depends on your context. I'd say if you're in India, you could be like, almost anything could trigger a shutdown. And if you are in Tanzania, you might say the election is a few years from now, and that might trigger a shutdown. So not everything is event specific. That actually as a category is the one that I will look at because I want to see what you're thinking about as far as like potential triggering events, but it's not going to be perfect ever. So don't worry too much about it. Should my project be a one-off activity or a series of activities with an end goal? Whatever you can do in the time and the budget you have, I would say focus on that. So you can have one activity. If you mean one off, like it just happens and there's not other things that follow up, I'd say it would be great for there to be follow up after the project. And I know that funding for that might not be guaranteed, but for you to have an idea of like what you would do after, should you get funding, or frankly, we all work in advocacy spaces and sometimes things are done on a volunteer basis. So if your project drums up enough interest from civil society groups already working on human rights issues, maybe they want to keep things going. Yes, it can be one-off because you only have guaranteed funding, but you should really be thinking forward. Okay, can part of the budget be used to purchase equipment? I would say that we will be very skeptical of budgets that have equipment as a huge line item. But if you really think that that equipment is important for accomplishing your project and is necessary, then put it in the budget. But just know if you're like laptop computer, $1,000, and that's your budget for the project, you'll get some eyebrow raises. Is it okay for my organization to use you as a reference for requests for funding and other organizations? I would say yes, but also know that I haven't worked with many of you one-on-one, so it would be like a light request or a recommendation. I would say it's really great that you took this course. I'm also happy to talk to you about what that means. All right, I have to sign off and join another call and do this again. I'm so sorry this was rapid fire. I will be posting the recording. Thank you all for your time and attention. Again, if you have follow-up questions after this, I will create another form, but I'm hoping that we answered all of the questions that you had. And unfortunately, I have to drop, so I'm already 4 minutes late for this other meeting. But again, thank you all. You're all amazing. See you soon.